take a handful of power, add some technology, a certain amount of ingenuity, some basic hard work. Turn up the heat, and what do you get? The modern kitchen. But where did they all come from? Our cookers and cutlery and crockery, they didn't just happen by magic. Well, that's what this series is all about. Dishing up the goods on the mechanics of domestic life. In this programme, I'm going back to the chopping board to find out how our sleek, fully integrated, appliance-filled kitchens have emerged from the caves of the Stone Age. A Neanderthal chef had a truly basic kitchen. Their cooking arrangements were little more than this, really. At least when they'd finished. There's no washing up. But some things haven't changed quite as much as you'd think over the centuries. Since the dawn of agriculture, we've been grinding cereals to make that most basic but tasty food, bread. Before shops and high streets, we would bake our own bread, so a bread oven was a central feature of large houses from the 12th century onwards. So this is the oven. So it looks almost biblical to me, the form and shape, it looks timeless. What period would this be from?
That's right. Well, these have been used from the earliest times. You can see them in Egyptian pictures, you can see them right through. In this country you see Iron Age examples of them. Very, very simple format.
It's a pizza oven really, isn't it? And it really just goes to show how timeless this bread making lark really is. Here I am, let's go, let's do it. There he is. They reckon people would have eaten 3 loaves a day each, so an oven like this would have been going non-stop. And if you wanted a white loaf, that required a lot of extra work.
There you go.
And what is this? What's the process?
Well, you're separating out the brown and the bran from the white, and it's coming through. Beautiful, high-quality white flour. But you can see why it was so treasured, because it takes so long.
So, who had the white loaves then?
Generally for the upper classes in the family.
So peasants like me got the brown bread?
Yeah, I fear so.
It's funny how things get reversed, isn't it? Now, brown bread is the bread to eat. The bread takes just 20 minutes to bake. These ovens are extremely efficient.
And well done.
Right, let's get him over to the table. Great stuff. Well, it looks good so far, but it's a bit too hot to... Let's slice this one. However, there is a design flaw in baking bread in the ashes of the fire. Now, I'm a sliced bread kind of guy.
Right.
But I'm not going to eat that, am I?
Well, unless you're of the lower classes and you're desperately hungry.
So they devised a style of slicing bread that wasted nothing and catered for rich and poor alike.
So first of all, you want to go down the centre to divide into your upper and lower crust. Everything has to be easily handleable, okay? And then that will sit again on top, and that would be taken to the table.
Oh, and we waltz off with that then?
Absolutely, that will be beside your place when you sit down at table.
But who gets the bottom bit?
Right, okay, well the bottom bit you can discard, that will go off to the peasants.
Ah, so that's where I come in, don't I? Yeah, that's me.
You want the fine stuff off the top with a nice soft crust, nice inside. Burnt stuff, go off to the lower orders.
So that's where the phrase upper crust comes from?
That's right, absolutely.
Upper crust. As baking improved, this type of bread was swept away by the convenience of sliced bread and toasters. We've tried many different ways to make toast successfully. Swiveling, flipping, ejecting and tilting. Some toasters had timer controls and ejected the toast, but they all needed care and attention. It wasn't until the 1950s that the automatic toaster with browner control became widely available, and we were finally able to make perfect toast. These days, we still need to mill flour to bake bread, but we've eliminated all the toil of a medieval baking day by putting all our baking into one little box, the fully automated bread making machine. You just pour all the ingredients in and leave it for a few hours. It's no quicker, but it's a lot easier. I really wish I'd invented this, and I really wish you could smell this. This is great. Oh, ooh, how do we get it out? There's a little handle. I'll pull this up and we should have our fully intact super duper loaf. Oh, there it is. Let's see if we can pop that out. Ha, ha, But we still do heat in the 21st century. It's still hot. Ha, 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 ha. How do we get it out? There must be a way. Oh, look at that. Now that's one fantastic loaf. This is all so simple and easy. Why not share it? Oh, that's enough of that. On with the story. Even by Tudor times, kitchens were rudimentary affairs. What they could cook was limited by technology and availability. I'm going to make a pottage with this. That'd be fantastic if I knew what pottage was. What is it?
Well, this is a savoury pottage. It basically just means it's cooked in a large pot. There's nothing fancy about it.
It's that exotic.
It's that exotic.
It's not potage.
Yes. No, well, it could be, but in Sussex it's pottage.
So how would those medieval people actually cook this big pot of goodness? Anthony?
Straight into a pot, over the fire.
Oh, great.
There we go.
What a great bit of kit. Now, it all looks very painful to me. What does it actually do?
Well, you've seen its main function. It swings out to bring the pots away from the fire. But it also goes up and down, so you can raise and lower your pot to speed up the pottage.
And so you can sort of increase or decrease the heat.
You can increase the heat underneath it, yeah.
You've not got an on and off button as you would have with today's cookers. This is the only way to do it. But what about this swinging in and out? Why do you need to bring the thing in and out of the fire?
Well, the pot gets very hot, so it's difficult to pick up by hand. They were also cooking in long clothes. They didn't want to get too close to the fire. They could set fire to themselves. So it's much safer to bring the pots away from the fire.
That's simple and effective, isn't it?
These homes were damp and drafty, so salt had to be kept in a box above the fire to keep dry. The leather hinge didn't rust, and the shape of the box was so distinctive that in the north of England, back-to-back terraced houses became known as salt pots.
You've done this before.
Only this is camping really inside, isn't it? Very appetising. I tell you what's missing. Potatoes.
No potatoes at this point. No, they came later.
What, when they got them out of the garden? No, you mean really later?
When they brought them over from America.
So this really is the basic meal for everybody.
This is one of the most basic meals you can get.
Come on, Anthony, where's me pottage?
Your pottage is served.
I do like a nice pot of pottage. And I've got my eating irons. Well, this doesn't look like it's going to be much use, so I'll start with a spoon. Great. God knows what I thought this would be like. But it's fantastic. But no fork, just a spoon and a knife.
Forks were mistrusted as devilish continental things when they started to venture across the channel in the 16th century. It was another 100 years before their use became common in this country, as we were perfectly happy with our own version of the fork, our fingers.
Well, I suspect they didn't use fingers with pottage. Perhaps use fingers with a bit of bread and all that business. This is great. I suspect I'm not really supposed to enjoy this, it's supposed to be medieval food, but hey, it must be healthy, there's no fat. We've all got to have a pot of pottage.
Fast forward a few hundred years and the Victorians, who else, were enjoying much improved kitchen arrangements. By the middle of the 19th century, most homes had a cast iron cooking range like this, and it gives us more opportunities for cooking different things at once and more control over the dishes we are cooking. We've still got the kettle hanging over the fire, and we can have pans hanging over the fire, but because this is cast iron, great conductor of heat, heat moves out through the fire to the edges here, to the hot plate, so we can have pan simmering away there, or we can make that pan boil by pushing the pan over the fire itself. And while all this is going on, we can be brewing a nice pot of tea here, and that's keeping warm all the time. But the new development is the oven. There's the oven, a heat box really. There's the door. Hot pot, my favourite. Now around this time, meat was becoming a lot more affordable, but even so, this is a very cheap cut of meat and it needs long, slow cooking. So hot pot is an ideal dish to put in a box like this, the oven. The principle is that it's sitting there by the fire for hours and the heat is going all around it, except that most of the heat is on this side. So at regular intervals, say an hour, you've got to rotate the dish so that the heat is distributed evenly.
But ranges took a whole day to clean every week and needed to be kept burning constantly. It was tough going. So how did we escape from this life of drudgery to the life of luxury of the 50s? It was all thanks to the cooker and its new sources of power.
The 19th century saw the evolution of the cooker in both its gas and electric forms. Not surprisingly, people were wary of these newfangled forms of power.
So they designed the new cookers to look as much like solid fuel ranges as possible, thinking the familiar look would reassure buyers.
What is it? It's electric. Oh dear.
Even so, some people thought that food cooked with electricity had an indefinable electric-y taste.
Some went so far as to worry that the magnetic fields associated with electricity would somehow affect their digestion.
They ran cooking demonstrations right across the country in both electric and gas showrooms.
And here's a complete mixed grill for 4 people. Even ordinary dishes can be exciting if they're properly cooked.
As with all new technologies, things take time to develop. And an electric cooker with many rings was very expensive. So multiple part pans were developed so that you could cook 1 or 2 different foodstuffs on one ring.
But both electricity and gas cookers still needed lots of attention.
Because temperature control was a hit and miss manual affair. You could get a hottish flame or a medium flame or a small flame. But it was manual and a bit vague.
Things improved significantly by the Second World War.
But the invention of the regulo for gas and the thermostat for electricity brought perfect cooking within reach of everybody, and I think that's probably round about regulo 6. Let's give it a try.
But there were ways of improving control.
Housewives had a trick of controlling the heat with electric cookers by simply raising the pan away from the electric plate by inserting a coin, a penny or a halfpenny. The development of the cooker is like the development of any kind of technology. The more things develop, the faster it accelerates. So by the 50s, we had pretty much the cookers we have today. And mass production meant that they were affordable. So what did we eat off? Well, plates.
And today we're bombarded with all sorts of literally bombarded with all sorts of plates. But at one time we used to eat off trees, bits of tree. Who would have thought it, really? Hang on. This is not my day job.
Wooden dishes were called treen because they were made from trees, but you had to be careful which tree you used. The favourite was sycamore, which left no taste and has very little toxic tannin. If you had money, you might be eating off pewter plates. By the 15th century, every town had a pewterer making these seemingly more hygienic plates. The mixture of lead and tin would horrify health and safety officers these days, but back then something else would have killed you off long before the lead had had a chance to go to work. Thank goodness for crockery.
In an age of throwaway mass production, it's hard to appreciate the wealth of effort that's gone into this decoration. This is simply a pot. They're all pots, but when they've been decorated like this, they become jewels, they become precious objects, simply by the amount of labour. And if you look at this pot here, this is a still life painting, really. It just happens to be on a pot. And only really wealthy people could afford this kind of thing because of the amount of labour that's involved here. Now, I've made, not like this, but I've made pots, and I've wanted to reproduce the design over and over. And I've probably made a little shape like this as a stamp and gone stamp, 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 very quick. But this is actually gold. This is gold paste which had been painted on. So all these little bits of decoration here have all been hand painted, and they're all exactly the same. Think how long that takes. It really is a sparkling little jewel.
And where the rich go, everyone else wants to follow.
So by the late 19th century, even the very poorest members of society were eating from incredibly decorated dishes.
It was all made possible by new methods of production.
Plates were mass-produced by jigging. Not that. This is a jigger, and that's a jollier. Fun words, aren't they, really? But it was a way of getting some speed in production. The plates weren't handmade anymore. They were sort of, well, they were done like this. What you've got to do is get some water on the jigger head, which is basically a lump of plaster, so that we can get our magically pre-weighed lumps of clay. And this should be exactly the right amount of clay to make the size of plate that I should be making. Now, I've never done this before, so we'll see if it works. So we'll get it on there, and we'll press him down. So I'll bring this along with my leg, and he should... And there I've got a flat piece of clay I can use. As always in these processes, it looks like that we've got to get a lot of lubrication so things don't stick and get mangled up. I've got another lever operated by my knee, and that gets things going. I think we need some more water there. Right, away we go. Let's just feel that clay. Now, I hope you spotted the deliberate mistake. Maybe I did it too fast before. We'll just do nice and gently. Get some water going. Nice, I can feel the width. A bit of lubrication. Feels right-ish. Well, maybe you'd like a plate. It's sort of organic, really, isn't it? But in actual fact, I should trim this. Right, now it looks like it might be a bit more plate-like. So we need to sort of get that dried out. So we've got to turn the motor off. There we are. Now that looks, apart from my thumbprints, it looks like a plate. But I suspect it doesn't look as good as this one, which was done earlier. And this is one that's dried out and is ready to be put in the kiln and fired.
All they needed now was some way of decorating plates faster and cheaper than before.
How did decorated crockery become available to the masses?
Well, basically, hand painting was the original process, but it was slow, it was expensive, it was only for the very rich. So some technique had to be developed by which patterns could be reproduced quickly and accurately and obviously cheaply. And that's where you come into printing.
What brought that about? What made that happen?
Well, there's lots of different things. There was a lot of competition from China brought in from China, which was decorated with very cheap labour. So obviously in Europe we had to start producing things faster.
Plates tend to be funny shaped, lumpy things. How could you possibly print onto that kind of surface?
Well, that's why we call it transfer printing, because you print from a copper sheet onto tissue paper. Tissue paper obviously is soft and very flexible, and you can then make that conform to the shapes of the plate or cup or whatever you're using.
To combat Chinese imports, many patterns adopted a pseudo-oriental style. One of the most famous is the willow pattern, introduced in 1780 and still with us today. It's a favourite among collectors, and there's a legend attached to it involving a story of doomed love between a lowly clerk and a mandarin's daughter. There's banishment, rich merchants, palaces, fleeing from danger, and death for the lovers who were finally reunited as lovebirds sent by the gods.
But the story's not true. It's simply a bit of 19th century spin invented by a salesman.
By the 20th century, our kitchens were full of the most familiar sights.
This 1930s setup here is really the start of the fitting kitchens we might know today, really. But even though this is quite nicely designed and everything, most homes would have a wooden table like this to eat from, and it needs to be kept clean for hygiene's sake, and that means work. We've got a nice modern kitchen here, but we still have to go to get it clean. You can see all that dirt would get right inside the grain. But we have a secret weapon, and that's the formal tablecloth. This isn't just for Sunday best, this is also to protect the table. Saves a lot of messing, really. So let's give it a go. Whoa, now look at this. Now here's something I've wanted to do for a very long time. Ladies and gentlemen, before your very eyes, I will reveal to you the wondrous material that changed our kitchen lives forever. I give you Formica!
A hard-wearing man-made material, Formica was typical of the leaps being made in kitchen design. It didn't chip like enamel, it wasn't porous like wood, and it felt modern. It was sold as part of the brave new world of the home of 50s Britain and changed the appearance of the kitchen forever.
Formica brought us colour, convenience, and cleanliness. Kitchens today still have all the appliances they ever had, but they've all been incorporated both visually and ergonomically into a complete culinary workshop.
And that's really all that kitchens are, a workshop for food. Instead of chisels, you've got vegetable peelers. Instead of corkscrews, drills. In fact, it was planing wood that sparked the idea for the cheese grater. All the earliest graters are is pieces of metal with a nail hammered through. And food mixers are the equivalent of the power tool.
Mixing ingredients for cooking by hand is hard, repetitive work. So it was an area that was ripe for some sort of mechanisation. And in the early 1900s, food mixers were introduced.
The first food mixers were inspired by visiting a bakery, but they came of age when designers came up with the Sunbeam, an American machine with multiple attachments that could chop, mince and mix. What's more, the whisk not only mixed the food, but spun the ball as well, in what became known as the planetary action, which ensured a thorough mix.
When I'm designing a new product, I like to take familiar concepts and flip them right on their head. And that's what's happened here. Instead of the attachments moving, it's the ball that provides the power for the attachments. The ball's whizzing round and you can bring in things like this whisk, put a jug on there and mix a few things. I love things like this where somebody's tried something different and you can almost see the thought processes at work. Mixers like this are still in use in industrial kitchens, but they just didn't catch on in the home.
The first all-British mixer was the Kenwood Chef. Ken Wood had been to America in the Merchant Navy and pretty much copied their approach. This 1960s model features an evolution of the planetary action. So the bowl no longer needed to spin to get a good mix. It became one of the must-have accessories of the 60s.
The next major breakthrough in the science of cooking came from technology developed directly for the defence of this land. Indirectly. And actually, it was all thanks to one of these.
In 1946, Dr. Percy Spencer was working with radar technology when he noticed that the bar of chocolate in his pocket had melted. The microwave oven was born. And with it came a vast array of processed and packaged foods. The kitchen need no longer be a place of work. The ultimate in convenience cooking had come of age.
Oh, look at that. Lancashire hot pot. Piping hot. Oh, and it is hot. And in less time than it takes to peel the potatoes. Oh, great.
We've come a long way since leaving our Stone Age caves. Or have we?
Of course, not every development in food and cooking is a giant leap forward. You can't get more basic than a barbecue. And barbecues have never been as popular as they are today. I bet Stone Age man would have felt right at home here.
Next week, how our homes have become time machines in inner space.